Welcome everyone to the game between Anish Giri and Arjun Erigaisi at the Tata Steel Masters 2026. You can see Anish waiting for the gong to be hit to signal the start of the round, a smile on his face as he shakes hands. He opens the game with pawn to d4. Arjun Erigaisi has had one win and two draws here. Meanwhile, Anish hasn't had the best of starts with two losses and one draw. Let's see what happens here. d4 and Arjun, he responds back with the symmetrical d5. Pawn comes up to c4. We have the queen's gambit on the board. And e6. The queen's gambit declined. Knight comes out to c3. Always interesting to see Arjun Erigaisi's choice. He goes bishop e7. And I believe he wants to bring his knight to f6. Castle here. Knight comes out to f3. And knight to f6 played. So we have the main line, but Anish goes for g3. Kind of a delayed Catalan, or you can say a Catalan with the knight on c3. He is taking a bit of risk here. Knight d7 played by Arjun. He's saying to Anish that I'm planning to take the pawn and then put my knight on b6 to defend it. Anish says, be my guest. I'm playing my bishop to g2. If you want to take it, take it. So he takes on c4. And now a knight comes to d2. This knight attacks the pawn on c4 and Arjun defends it with knight b6. But Anish still takes it because after knight takes c4, there is queen a4 check and you win the knight. So Arjun immediately strikes with c5. And Anish chops off the knight on b6. If you take with the queen, then pawn takes pawn, bishop takes and castles, and white is better. So he takes with the pawn here. And now a big question for Anish. Does he take on c5? Does he play e3? He takes on c5. He's ready to go into an endgame. I wonder who is happier in this endgame. I mean, structurally, white should be the one who's happier. I mean, taking on c5, undoubling your pawns may not be the best of ideas, and Arjun is very quick to realize it. He takes it with his bishop. He attacks the pawn on f2. Pawn comes up to e3. He would like to put his king on c2. And Arjun Erigaisi now. Well, the thing is, the downside that he has is these double pawns, but the upside is e5, king e7, bishop comes out, excellent development. King comes up to e2. And black goes king e7. Bishop comes up to d2. And now rook to d8 played. White goes rook d1. And bishop to g4 check. Now with this check, you want to play pawn to f3. Then he would have gone back bishop e6. But he plays bishop f3 and Arjun goes h5. So what Arjun wants is take. He might take back with the pawn and make the h2 pawn weak. So Anish first goes h4. And now bishop comes to b4. You can see how Arjun's pieces are free flowing here. Bishop takes bishop taken. Taking with the knight would be a mistake because of check and then picking this up. So pawn takes. Now if knight check, I can take with the knight defending my bishop, so you can no longer take it here. And Anish is just exchanging pieces. He goes knight d2. Very interesting move. Arjun is like, I'll take the bishop. Bishop takes d2. And knight takes. but you can feel it that there's pressure here. And now a wonderful move, rook c8. Because if rook c1, I can take, I mean, here, take on c1, take on c1, and just take on a2. So that's why he goes rook db1. And now king e6. It's incredible how Arjun has managed to create pressure on Anish. Rook to c2. Wonderful move once again. The rook comes in. Anish Giri is in trouble here. He goes king d3. Maybe king d1 was also possible, but king d3. Now the rook comes to c8. You cannot challenge on the c file now. The rooks have been doubled. e4. Yeah, he plays his pawn to e4. Just so that black cannot push there. And rook comes back to c6. Now the threat is check and then entering in once again. King e3 played. And Arjun now can go rook d8. He goes rook d6. And very important to go rook c1. Otherwise the rook is coming in. So plays rook to c1. And Arjun doubles down the d file. He goes rook c2. But is there a check now? Yes, he comes in with a check. The way in which Arjun is playing this is going to put tremendous pressure on Anish. Rook d4, attacking this pawn on e4. You have to go back up. King e3. And now rook b4, attacking here and bringing in the other rook. Finds it. Rook b4 played. And pawn to b3. Well, maybe better was rook a3 somehow to bring the rook to d3. But b3 played. And now just rook d4. It's already huge advantage for Arjun. While Arjun tries to focus in, I'm pretty sure he's excited now. Threat is knight e4 takes rook e4 and the pawns are rushing down the board. Well, Anish, good or bad, he must play rook c4 now to break the coordination between the two rooks. But here's the nice tactic now. And Arjun, I'm pretty sure, has seen this. Rook takes pawn check. Excellent move. Deflecting the knight. And now picking up the pawn on c4. So pawn up position for Arjun. Also e4 under pressure. a4 is a bit weak. So he comes back knight d2. Now Anish has to defend this with all his might. Rook b4 played by Arjun Erigaisi. The rook is passive here. But Anish tries to undouble his pawns. He goes a5. Arjun takes ba, rook a5. And now one idea could be knight e8 to d6. That's a very nice rerouting move. And I really like it to bring the knight on the d6 square. He plays his pawn to g6. And rook to a8. He goes pawn to b5. And this is perhaps not the best move by Arjun. He should have kept this pawn on b7. Maybe gone rook b2. Maybe tried to play a bit with king e7. These maneuvers. Because now check and somehow black pieces are a bit miscoordinated. You know, like he gives a check. There are checks all around. Knight has to block. Suddenly the knight is passive. White knight can get active. And Anish coming up with this very nice move f3. I love it. Because with this move, he essentially is removing this pawn. Pawn takes, knight takes, and then you have g4 and h5 coming up. So knight takes, now threatening the e5 pawn. He goes pawn to f6. And Anish Giri goes g4. And his idea is to push h5 and create a passer. And Arjun, the advantage that he had built so carefully, is withering away. He gives a check again. And king comes back to e7. And he goes rook a7. The rook goes to a4, offering a trade. Now the only move is rook b7. Putting the rook behind the pawn. You can go b4, but then the pawn is even further weakened. So rook a5 maybe. And Anish, now that his rook is very well placed, goes h5. And now the remaining game, we've put it at 5x speed, because the game did continue for many moves, but somehow you can see that Arjun managed to win the h pawn and Anish managed to win the b pawn. But I think the result was never really in doubt. Although at many occasions Arjun tried to create a lot of possibilities for himself. But Anish kept his calm, kept his cool. The main problem for black is that it's very difficult to create a counterplay here, or like actually create a passer here. It's very tough. And again, setting up some kind of a discovered attack. King goes back. Check. King goes here. He gives another check. King goes behind. Rook comes to b2 to attack the knight. Defends it. Rook a2. King d7. Rook c2. Check. King e7. He comes back. And one of the things that Anish is really, really good with all his experience is that he knows the value of this half point. And now finally comes the tactics where he takes. And this is just a draw now. King g3. And a draw is agreed. The players agree for a draw and immediately start analyzing. Think Anish and Arjun go on analyzing this entire game for close to 4, 5, or even 10 minutes, So, a great job there by Arjun to create winning chances, but even greater job there by Anish to save that tough game. But yeah, Arjun is on 2.5 points. He could have been in joint lead along with Hans and Nodirbek. Meanwhile, Anish with 2 draws and 2 losses will be searching for his first win. And he can get back. That's possible. And such games really give you a lot of confidence.